Hello, and welcome to The Revealing. I'm once again your host, Pavoratii, bringing you information on the Idaho 4 case. Once again, this is an entertainment channel. I'm not here to slander anyone. These are my opinions. With that being said, let's get started. Today, I've got 3 videos coming to you, and this is some very interesting stuff. I was watching the Thought Right podcast, and I don't know how, and I don't know if it's all real, but they have leaked text messages from the father of one of the victims in this case and a true crime internet detective. And these text messages go over an extensive period of time. It took me a long time actually to slow it down and go through and read every one, but as I read them, it looks credible to me, but I can't say that for sure. So take everything I say in these next 3 videos with a grain of salt. I'm going to assume it's accurate, but who knows these days? People can really fake some good stuff. But if it is accurate, then folks, go back and watch my videos. I'm about to show you where it's uncanny how right I am. I mean, how right I infer to be. So with that being said, I'm breaking this up into 3 videos. The first video, I'm going to discuss the 2 surviving roommates and their possible roles in the atrocity, as well as their possible roles in the upcoming court procedures against Mr. Kohberger. Now, with that being said, let's get started with this. I'm going to show you the text messages that pertain to what I'll be talking about today. And I'm going to show them in a fairly quick manner, so if you can't read them all as I show them to you, that's fine. I'm going to go ahead and read them to you when it's done so that we're clear about what we're discussing. And I'll see you here in a minute. Interesting, huh? Okay, I'm going to break this down into a 2-part section. The first part, let's go ahead and go through some of these text messages. And again, this is from the perspective, as I go through and do this, I should have told y'all, I'm not putting any credence into the blue column of those messages. That's the online sleuth detective. Okay, the only credence I put in this entire thing, except for one little snippet I'm going to use of the other person's info, but the only information that I'm putting any credence into is the one that's supposedly the father of the victim. And when you look at things from his perspective, he's looking for information. He's also given a little bit of information, trying to get information. So sometimes you have to read between the lines on what he's actually saying. But let's go ahead and I'm going to read some of his responses, not the other one, okay? Just so we're clear. Okay, and this pertains strictly to the roommates. Okay, one thing he mentioned was they talked the whole time the shit is going down by texts. So the whole time the atrocity's happening, roommate upstairs and roommate downstairs are texting back and forth about what's going on. The grand jury members, okay, so basically in a few texts before that, he said that he was actually been in contact with a couple of the people that were on the grand jury that indicted Mr. Kohberger. And he was able to ask them some questions, and these are the responses to the questions that he asked. This is what he gathered from them. Now, the grand jury members both said they didn't believe her, DM, her testimony, and it created more questions than answers. They said, some of them said she would be investigated, but for reasons that we do not fully understand. They didn't feel BF, downstairs, was as shady, but they only had so much time to question them. The next text says, one thing most people don't know is DM and especially BF are well connected and have friends in powerful positions. And that would be the attorney family members, I imagine. And then another one says, no, they said she heard everything and even admitted saying via text, and this is talking about BF upstairs, I think someone killed them. She just didn't call and report it, even as she was hiding. Now that's very interesting. And I know a lot of y'all really think that, she has something to do with this scenario. When I read this though, I'm thinking it's probably something else. I'm thinking that the upstairs roommate probably did use substances, unlike the rest of the girls in the house. Maybe the downstairs roommate does as well. And in fact, probably both of them. And they probably had either some substances or some paraphernalia there with them that would get them in trouble. So as they sat there and was scared to death and knew what was going on, they also had fear that if they did call the police that they would be arrested as well. And that's probably why the grand jury is thinking that there's going to be an investigation into those girls. However, that's probably why he says that they have powerful families and they won't be investigated for that. And a lot of people equate those young ladies with the Emma Bailey and Demetrius scenario. And I want to explain why that is not plausible in any manner. And this is the only snippet that I took out of the blue column on these texts, because this is something that I've heard before, and it really just reaffirms it when I hear it again. But go ahead and take a look at that. Okay, just to read the part that I found important, he's got a quote from Emma Bailey's mom about her being in prostitution and Demetrius pimping her out and selling drugs. Okay, so let's talk about this for a minute. When we're looking at the Idaho 4 case, this is a professional hit. This is not somebody going in and hurting people, and I mean, this is a professional hit. This was 4 people being unalived inside of just minutes, and them escaping pre-planned. I mean, this is not a low-level drug hit. Okay, this is a high-level drug hit. And when you talk about this Emma Bailey and Demetrius, okay, let's think about this. Are they really dealing in volume? Do they really have the type of funds that somebody who's dealing in volume, who's upper level, have? I can assure you they don't, because look, they're living in hotels. All right, now think about how much a hotel costs, y'all. Even a cheap hotel is like 60, 70 bucks a night. They do the math. You spend 70 bucks a night over a month, the cheapest hotel out there is still costing you $2,100 a month. How much is your rent? How much is your mortgage? Probably not that much. So that's a lot of money when you have to live in a hotel. Plus you got to eat. Plus you got to be able to have your drugs, because they're own drugs. So that's a lot of drugs you got to sell to be able to cover that. And they ain't able to sell enough to cover it because he's having to pimp his girlfriend out. And do you think if they were doing high volume and they had a ton of money that he'd be pimping out his girlfriend? Come on. No, these were just associates, probably of the 2 roommates, upstairs and downstairs, that survived. That's probably where they got their little stuff that they messed with, but Not enough volume there for this case. For this case, you have to look much, much deeper. Who has the knowledge, who has the ability, and who has the motive? And we've discussed that in length. And if you haven't seen all my videos, go back and watch them. Okay, so now there's two more aspects of this. Let me read these texts. You may have read them as I went through. If not, you can go back and read them, obviously. But these are two more texts from the roommate perspective. This is, the father's perspective on them. It says, they talked the whole time. No, I'm sorry, I already read that one. Okay, so the odd thing is their story are mixed with two different events. Okay, so what he's saying there is their story is mixed with two different events, which means there's two different stories, two different events that's taken place. The roommate upstairs has her event. The roommate downstairs has her event. Two different ones. We already know what the roommate upstairs event is because law enforcement has put that out there as the media narrative, okay? Seen the guy with the bushy eyebrows and dressed in black going out the slider. The next message, though, is remember the report BF, downstairs roommate, saw a naked guy? We heard he took this off, which means that Dickie's jumpsuit. That Dickie's jumpsuit. He took this off, and he took it off at the slider and placed it in a plastic garbage bag, and she noticed him leaving in his underwear. Okay, this is one of those where you have to listen on the third level, okay? Remember the report, BF saw a naked guy. Cut. We heard he took off his jumpsuit at the slider and placed it in a plastic garbage bag. Cut. She noticed him leaving in his underwear. Now, was the downstairs roommate upstairs in the kitchen watching this guy leaving his underwear? Oh, the upstairs roommate was in the kitchen watching her version of events, right? So that means the downstairs roommate must have seen somebody leaving downstairs in his underwear. So if we have a gentleman leaving upstairs in a black jumpsuit and a gentleman leaving downstairs in his underwear, what does that tell us? It tells us we have two different gentlemen in this event. That, my friends, is the exculpatory evidence that everybody is talking about with the downstairs roommate. Now, what else can we infer from this? If she sees a gentleman leaving in his underwear, what would be visible to her? All of his skin except for what's under his underwear, right? If that gentleman had any tattoos, would she have been able to see them? You betcha she would have. So now you have to ask yourself, does Mr. Bryan Kohberger have any tattoos? Don't believe he does. There's been no reporting of that. Does Mr. Rhymes with Alpaca have any tattoos? Believe he does, doesn't he? I look forward to hearing your criticisms, your comments. Once again, like and subscribe. The next video is going to get even more interesting as I'm going to go into how they got to Mr. Kohberger, and it wasn't the IGG that got him. Pavoratii out.